Jean-Roch Coignet's memoirs offer a vivid account of his life as a soldier under Napoleon Bonaparte. The French army is getting ready for the Great Russian Campaign in 1812. Let's begin. In September 1810, great preparations were made for Fontainebleau. Hunting season approached, and our battalion was ordered to serve there, with Adjutant Major Belcourt accompanying us. We were quartered, and the entire court arrived with splendid hunting carriages, 4 coaches with matching horses and spare horses of another colour. It was magnificent to see. Finally, Belcourt was ordered to command 12 non-commissioned officers and corporals to be directed by a gamekeeper and placed in designated spots. At the rendezvous, we were positioned in a sandy clearing leading to several alleys, with a beautiful tent, a set table, and footmen around. The entire court dined before hunting began. That day, circles, each with a man inside, surrounded by falcons, were brought. Marie-Louise took one of these birds and launched it at the first game that appeared. The bird swooped like lightning and returned it to her. This amusing hunt lasted an hour. Then the coaches galloped to an area where peasants, armed with poles, stood in a large enclosed space filled with rabbits, unable to escape. The Emperor had many loaded guns, signalled, and the peasants struck the bushes, causing a swarm of rabbits to flee, and the Emperor fired. The gunshots followed rapidly. He told his aides de camp, "Go ahead, gentlemen, your turn. Take weapons and enjoy yourselves." The ground was covered with game. He called the gamekeepers and told our adjutant major, "Have this game collected. Give a rabbit to each peasant, 4 to each gamekeeper, load the rest in the wagon, and distribute it to my old grumblers." It filled the wagon. "Tomorrow you will take them boar hunting, provisions will be provided, and you will spend the day in the forest." The adjutant major gave orders, and everything departed. That was the first hunting day, and the battalion ate rabbit. The next day, 4 wagons arrived, 1 for provisions, 2 for large Russian dogs, and 1 for live boars. With the gamekeepers, dog handlers, and gamekeepers, we departed with 50 men and our adjutant major. Near the lair where the boars were sheltered, the wagons were unloaded and the dogs paired off. A doctor was present to treat dogs wounded in the fierce combat about to begin. First, the gamekeepers said, "We must eat. We won't have time later." A footman served the adjutant major and doctor, napkin on arm. We had a hearty meal. Then we moved to the launch site, with dog handlers leading pairs of these large, long dogs. The boars were flushed out, and 6 dogs were set on each furious animal. 3 boars were immobilized, unable to move. 2 dogs clung to each ear, pressing so tightly along its body that the boar couldn't move. Gamekeepers arrived with a muzzle, bridling the boar so it couldn't defend itself. Its 4 legs were bound with a noose, the dogs released, and they pursued the herd, followed by handlers. The prisoners were loaded into the wagon. The back door opened, their restraints removed, they fell into the deep wagon. We captured 14 boars that day, filling the wagon. 2 dogs were injured by tusks. We needed refreshment after chasing through dense woods. The Emperor was delighted with such a hunt. He had an enclosure prepared near the Paris road to deposit these live animals. It was a tall, sturdy rotunda. With a split door, the wagon was backed up, and the furious animals fell into the rotunda. That was our second hunt, continuing for 15 days. 50 boars and 2 wolves were captured alive. In this enclosure, an amphitheatre on stilts with chairs for the entire court was built. Visitors ascended a gentle slope to the centre under a fine tent. Sentries prevented entry. The court arrived at 2 o'clock. One had to climb the fir trees to see the furious beasts leap at the palisades. The Emperor began. He did not shoot the wolves. They were the last, making leaps up to the top of the palisades. The Emperor allowed his court's principals to finish the fete, and all the boars were shared among the guard. We were well regaled. He kept the 3 largest. Next, he ordered his guards to assess the number of stags, their ages, and report to him. Within 2 days, the survey was done by numbers, each stag's age known by its track. The night before the grand hunt, guards and dog handlers set out with 2 large leashed hounds to locate stag number 1. During the night search, the track of this animal was found. The guard controlled the hound, making it recognize the stag's track to hunt the next day. The hound, leashed, was led step by the guard, and near the lair, restrained by the guard, raised its right paw to pounce on its prey. All this was done quietly. The lair was marked, and the report made to the Emperor for the court's rendezvous. Orders were given for the carriages and relay horses. 52 dogs formed 4 relays, 13 per relay, not counting the leading hound initiating the hunt. Among the 13 dogs, 1 led the 12 others. Once the hound had launched the stag, this leader took the stag's track and did not leave it, and the 12 dogs marched in formation beside it. The Emperor ordered Mr. Belcourt to command 24 men, sergeants and corporals, to position them at 3 designated points for carriage relays. Before starting, the court dined in a sandy area, and after the banquet, the carriages arrived, everyone mounted, and the stag was launched. The Emperor galloped to the passage point, followed by musket-bearers with arms. There he waited for the stag, and if he missed it, he sped to another passage point. The second relay began, and soon the hunt was far from us. We stood silently. The Major said, "Maneuver and project your voice. Form a square by division, in marching, by the quickest maneuver." I began. "Form the square on the 2nd Division, in marching. 1st Division, by the left flank and by file to the right. 3rd Division, by the right flank and by file to the left. 4th Division, by the left flank, by file to the left. Accelerated pace. 2nd Division, ordinary pace." I made a mistake I couldn't correct, and the Major said, "You are too hasty, too fiery. Deploy your square. Do not rush." But the Emperor heard me from his waiting point. He remembered my mistakes. The stag was killed by him, and hunting horns sounded the rally. All the carriages arrived at the rendezvous. The Emperor, pleased, stood there on foot, with the beautiful stag beside him. The whole court gathered, and he called for us, telling our Major, "Who commanded the manoeuvre in the forest? Bring him here." The Major had me step forward and presented me. "So, it's you," said the Emperor, who resounded through the forest. "You command well, but you erred." "Yes, sire, I forgot. Accelerated pace. That's it. Be careful next time." The Major said, he punched himself in the head, "Make him instructor of the 2 regiments. Let him be assisted by 2 trained corporals. Take the 50 oldest velites and drill them twice a day. Push them in theory, and in 2 months I will see them. Ensure they are strong and capable of becoming officers." Mr. Belcourt approached us. "Well, he has given us work. We are confined for 2 months, but no need to fret. We will manage. Are you content?" he asked. "I will remember the Fontainebleau forest." That evening the stag was gutted by torchlight in the honour courtyard, surrounded by beautiful balconies where the court attended. It was a magnificent sight. 200 dogs in formation behind a line of handlers, holding them with whips. At the signal, the man skinned the stag. Hunting horns announced the feast, and all pounced on their prey. The 200 famished dogs formed a mound, all atop each other. The hunts concluded after 15 days. The court returned to Paris, and we to Courbevoie. The barracks held 3 battalions. Each month, 1 battalion took its turn, serving in Paris, a grueling service. 8 hours on duty, 2 hours on patrol, and nightly major rounds. The adjutant major reported to General d'Orsay that the Emperor had appointed me instructor of the 2 grenadier regiments, and I immediately assumed my duties. But that was not all. In the morning, confined men, broom in hand, cleaned and washed the streets, the most arduous task being washing the latrines. With a sand quarry near the gate, if many men were punished, I led them to fetch sand, which they preferred to drill. I took 20 or 30 men, gathered tools, and put them to work. Some fetched sand, others pushed wheelbarrows, others managed the cart, and all the sand was brought to the yard. This was done without complaint. Similarly, if tasked with pulling weeds, there was some grumbling, but it was done. I varied their punishments as much as possible. These old soldiers were docile, despite leaving the regiment as sergeants or even sergeant majors to become simple grenadiers. Breaking a few hard heads was challenging, but they had to bend. I commanded them effectively. All occurred before the weak officers, well supported by 2 firm adjutant majors upholding discipline. This took place before the officers' pavilion, who watched these movements. They had their pension in the barracks, leading to their garden. They called me to show the plan for a large parterre they wanted conscripts to make. "We will give them," they said, "a bottle of wine per man if you will supervise them." "I will." "Very well. We will draw a line on the terrace and mark the holes for planting acacias forming 2 quinces in front of the barracks and 1 on each side of the gate. Call your conscripts and inform them for tomorrow." After the roll call, I said, "No more drills. We will plant trees for shade. Bravo, Sergeant. That will amuse us. You won't be inconvenienced. 4 men will dig 1 hole in 2 hours. We are pleased. Go rest. At 6, conscript roll call. Some will sweep, others dig holes." The chiefs brought a large barrel of Suresnes wine, costing less than 10 centimes per bottle, and gave 1 bottle per man. Everything proceeded smoothly. Holes, massifs, and planting 8,700 trees and shrubs by conscripts. I was complimented by my superiors and considered for overseeing the non-commissioned officers' mess. It was a serious task to prepare and serve meals for 54 NCOs. Paid in advance, I received, per day, 45 francs 70 centimes. Additional daily profits included bread, 8 francs 10 centimes, wine, 8 francs 10 centimes, extra dishes, 3 francs, wood, 1 franc. Sundays, all left for Paris, adding 21 francs 20 centimes to the 45 francs 70 centimes, totaling 66 francs 90 centimes per day. I could meet all needs and satisfy them. At month's end, I showed my expenses to the sergeant major. "But," he said, "you are behind." "Not at all. I have a daily profit of 21 francs 20 centimes, adding to my 45 francs 70 centimes, making 66 francs 90 centimes. And you?" "I receive 64 francs 50 centimes monthly. That's enough. 3 days' profit pays my chief and 2 aides. So, rest assured, the mess will run smoothly." The sergeants said at dinner, "We must boost consumption to keep our mess running. Let's each have a bottle. Profits will return. Be prompt at the table in 4s. You will be served on time, and I will preside over all meals." The Administrative Council provided a cart and a soldier for train provisions from Paris with 4 fatigue men and a corporal per company. At 2 in the morning, I led this detachment to Paris with my cook's note. This weekly purchase was considerable. I paid 5 francs for my 4 men's breakfast, and they were pleased. By 9 and 4 I returned to preside over meals. Sunday inspections by the colonel or general found the table set with white napkins, earning me compliments even from General d'Orsay, before whom the entire barracks trembled. I mentioned that this severe man, passing through rooms, ran his finger over the breadboard. Finding dust, the corporal or room chief was punished for 4 days. He also ran his finger under our beds. In our chests, no dirty linen was allowed. A model of appearance, he could surpass Murat. I was never caught off guard. Everything rested on me. Conscript drill, 50 velites to train, and managing the mess. All my hours were taken. Through dedication, I justified my captain's good opinion. I can say I owe him the bread I earned on the battlefield. Thus ended 1810. In 1811, festivities awaited us. On March 20th, a courier arrived at our barracks announcing the Empress's delivery, stating the cannon would be heard. Everyone waited. At the first shots from Les Invalides, We counted silently. At the 22nd and 23rd, all cheered. Only one cry, "Long live the Emperor!" The King of Rome was baptized on June 9th, with festivals and fireworks. This cherished child was always accompanied by the palace governor when out with his beautiful nurse and a lady carrying him. One day in Saint-Cloud Chateau, Marshal Duroc signalled me to approach. The dear child reached for my plume, I bent, and he tore my feathers. The marshal said, "Let him be." The child laughed with joy, but the plume was sacrificed. I felt a bit foolish. The marshal said, "Give it to him, I will have it replaced." The lady-in-waiting and nurse had a good laugh. The marshal told the lady, "Give the prince to this sergeant, let him carry him." Gods! I extended my arms to receive the precious burden. Everyone gathered around me. "Well," said Mr. Duroc. "Is he heavy?" "Yes, General." "Walk with him. You are strong enough to carry him." I took a short stroll on the terrace. The child tore my feathers, ignoring me. His drapery fell low, and I feared falling, but I was happy to carry such a child. I returned him to the lady, who thanked me, and the marshal said, "Come to my quarters in an hour." I presented myself before the marshal, who gave me a voucher for a beautiful plume from the maker. "Do you only have this one?" he asked. "Yes, General. I will give you a voucher for 2. "Thank you, General. Go, my brave. You will have one for Sundays." Back with my superiors, they said, "But you have no plume. The King of Rome took it. You jest. Look at this voucher from Marshal Duroc. Instead of 1 plume, I will have 2, and I carried the King of Rome on my arms for a quarter hour. He tore my plume. A fortunate mortal, they said. Such memories are unforgettable." But I never saw the child again, politics having reaped him before his time. All the princes of the Confederation of the Rhine were in Paris, and Prince Charles was young Napoleon's godfather. The Emperor showed them a review of his making at the Carrousel. Infantry regiments arrived via Rue de Rivoli, forming lines along the Cambacérès Hotel. The Guard infantry was in 2 lines before the Tuileries. At noon the Emperor descended, mounted his horse, reviewed the Guard, then positioned himself opposite the clock. He called our adjutant major and said, "Do you have an NCO who can repeat my command?" "Mouton cannot." "Yes, sire. Bring him here to repeat after me." Mr. Belcourt brought me. Generals, colonels, battalion chiefs advised, "Do not err. Ignore that it is the Emperor commanding. Above all, confidence." Mr. Belcourt presented me. "Here, sire, the best commanding sergeant. Stand on my left and repeat my command." The task was not difficult. I acquitted myself well. At each command of the Emperor, I turned to repeat it. Upon completion, I faced the Emperor to receive his next command. All foreign eyes on the balcony watched me. They saw an NCO with a musket receiving commands and immediately turning to repeat them, always in motion. All corps chiefs repeated word for word, and after having their men pass under the Arc de Triomphe, formed battle lines before the Emperor. He galloped past the regiment, returned to his position, and manoeuvred them, making them march past. This infantry manoeuvre lasted 2 hours. The Guard closed the march. Then I was dismissed by the Emperor, replaced by a cavalry general. Just in time, I was sweating. My superiors praised my strong voice. The sergeant major took me to the garden café to refresh me. "I am pleased with you, dear Coignet." The captain applauded, saying, "I forced him to be a corporal. My work. He commands well. Thank you. But one feels small before the sovereign." I listened without lifting my eyes to him. He would have intimidated me. I only saw his horse. After drinking our bottle of wine, we reached the company. My captain took my hand. "I am pleased." I was showered with praise. Returning to Courbevoie, my comrade's table was set. My cook had spared no effort, distributing wine, 1 litre and 25 sous per man, NCOs, payday, 43 sous, corporals, 33 sous. Everyone was cheerful. The next day, I resumed my arduous tasks. I drove my 50 vélites and conscripts, took writing lessons in the evening, supervised the mess, and maintained the barracks. never caught off guard. I thought, I hold my marshal's baton, I will be the barracks veteran in my old age. I was completely wrong. I was not halfway through my career, only having a bed of roses, with thorns yet to be cleared. Grenadiers arrived to fill the regiments, reforming the old, unable to campaign. 2 veteran guard companies were formed, delighted with the easy service. Daily, superb men arrived. I drilled them, and the adjutant majors instructed them in theory. The velités advanced so rapidly that the Emperor reviewed them in 2 months. It was delightful to see them manoeuvre. They made no mistakes, all commissioned as second lieutenants in the line, then joined their regiments. The Emperor asked, "Do they know how to command?" "Yes, sire, all. Bring out the first. Have him command arms handling." He was delighted. "Bring out the last. Have him command the 12-step charge." "Well, bring out the 10th from the first rank. Have him command the 2-rank volley. Present arms. Enough." I was relieved to pass such a test. He told the adjutant majors, "Push the new arrivals, make cartridges for the grand manoeuvre. I will send 3 tons of powder." And he left for Saint-Cloud. For 15 days, 100 men made cartridges, with adjutant majors supervising. Shoeless to avoid accidents, they were relieved every 2 hours and feet inspected. We made 100,000 packets, after harvesting grand manoeuvres in the Saint-Denis plain and reviews at the Tuileries, with significant artillery parks, wagons and ambulances. The Emperor inspected, mounting wheels to check completeness. Sometimes Mr. Larry received his wrath. Engineers also trembled before him. Grand war preparations were evident daily. We did not know where war would be declared. In late April 1812, we were ordered to be ready to depart, inspected for linen and shoes, 3 pairs of shoes, 3 shirts, and full uniform in the pack. On the eve of departure review, I was called before the council and appointed courier for the 2 grenadier regiments, tasked with managing the treasury and equipment, forming 4 wagons, 2 for officers' trunks, 2 loaded at the treasury, Place Vendôme. Showing my letter, my 2 wagons were loaded with barrels of 28,000 francs. The guard was confined the night before departure, and I alone permitted out to settle accounts with the butcher and baker. I returned at 2 in the morning. The guard had left at midnight for Meaux on May 1st, 1812. An old sergeant remaining at Courbevoie as storekeeper received my accounts, giving me a route sheet authorizing rations for 8 men and 16 horses. At noon, I departed Place Vendôme with 4 wagons. Riding the first with a fine cabriolet, I seated myself, sabre at side, feeling important. I arrived in Meaux at midnight, heading to the guardhouse for the adjutant major's address, led to his quarters. "Who is there?" "It's me, Major." "You, Coignet." "Impossible. Are your wagons fully loaded on the square?" "Yes, Captain." "You have excelled, my brave. See me tomorrow before departure. Here are vouchers for forage and bread rations. Take 4 men from the guard and 4 wagon soldiers. They will wake the storekeeper. Your lodging billets are on my mantle. Good night. Captain, sleep well. I will stay at the guardhouse tonight. By 3, the horses and men will be served. Trained soldiers will sleep near their horses, ready to leave by 7. Mr. Belcourt came to the post to ensure rations were supplied, pleased with my efficiency. "You are set for the journey, able to follow us. If you give me my route sheet, I will depart 2 hours ahead, collecting letters in large cities, poste restante. I will await you to deliver them." He consulted the colonel, approving my request. Daily I arrived before the corps. My men and horses spared the heat. At stops, I made repairs. The Emperor had departed for Dresden with the Empress. This city housed Europe's finest royal family, father and sons not under 5 feet 10 inches. The Emperor stayed 10 days to confer with kings, receiving and giving courtly blessings before parting from his wife. Farewells were sombre. The splendid carriages left for Paris, and the Emperor remained with his grand armies. We arrived in Posen on June 3rd, and Königsberg on the 12th, where the headquarters was established. We rested as he visited Danzig for 4 days. This refreshed the old guard, having made forced marches. We were ordered to depart for Insterburg, arriving on June 21st at Wilkowski. We left the night of June 22nd, 23, establishing headquarters in a hamlet a league and a half from Kauno. The next night, 3 bridges were constructed over the Niemen, completed by midnight on the 25th, and the army began crossing into Russian territory. It was awe-inspiring to see these masses moving in often arid plains, often without shelter or bread, arriving in darkness, uncertain where to turn for necessities. Yet providence and courage never abandon the good soldier. This concludes the 8th part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. Please consider subscribing for more episodes.